What's up everyone, it's Dakota and welcome back to another modern video, and today we're going to be watching one of the matches that I played with the Rakdos Evoke deck. The exact list that I'm playing is card for card the one that Jacob Beardsley played in the Pro Tour and ended up winning the whole Pro Tour with. I'm hopefully going to be going through all of the decks that made the top 8, picking out the lists I liked from, you know, the ones that weren't Rakdos Evoke or Amulet Titan, and just hopefully getting like a good match out of it and just showing off exactly what the deck can do and what it does. So real quickly before we get into it, the Rakdos Evoke deck is basically this like red black mid range deck that just has the ability to scam your opponent out of playing a game of Magic by playing like a Grief, by pitching a black card and playing something like Undying Malice, which you will see in my 6 card hand here, to essentially return to the battlefield, Thoughtseize your opponent for 2 cards, and have a 4/3 in play, and just kind of hope that they can't recover from that. Obviously, sometimes it happens, but a lot of the times, like you end up dealing a ton of damage, and by that time, you can play cards like Dauthi Voidwalker, or just protect like your other threats with Undying Malice, Fury to wipe away your opponent's board, to where if they try to interact with creatures, they're not very able to effectively. I'm going to be showing you all the games uh, from this match and stuff. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into game one. I ended up keeping this 6 card hand. The idea being here, I guess I'll search up. The idea being here in these 7 card hands, and kind of like what I learned with a few matches I played before this, that the Rakdos Evoke deck can just play like a mid range deck, and like a very good mid-range deck at that. So here my idea was like I could Thoughtseize if they're, playing any sort of like creatures, like if they're playing, Dauthi Voidwalkers on their side, and that could stop my uh, evoke creatures from, you know, being brought back with Undying Malice, or just being cast by theirs. I have some interaction for like their creatures. If they're a combo deck, I have like Thoughtseize. Dauthi Voidwalker is going to be pretty good. So obviously I need to hit lands, but I felt pretty confident with this hand. Found out really quickly that we were playing against Yawgmoth. Ended up taking the Grist because we have the Fatal Push for their Delighted Halfling, which they're going to absolutely play on turn 1, and essentially hoping here that we, can maybe even find like a red card. Like if we draw a red card here, instead of a land, we can just like pitch Fury, pitch the card to Fury, Undying Malice it, end up getting rid of their creature, and having this big creature in play when we know that they only have a Quarter Calling. And they're far off from being able to get a Dryad Arbor with that, which if they waste it to get a Dryad Arbor to block for a turn is going to be pretty good for us. So we go to their turn. Predictably, they play the Blooming Marsh and they play the Delighted Halfling. We go to our turn. We end up drawing the land, Fatal Push, and then we can just pass, go fetch a tap Shock land, which I think here I ended up. Okay, no, it was in a different game. So we draw another one. We play this tapped. That's kind of a mistake. So not necessarily against like the Yawgmoth deck in particular, because they don't really play any removal in the main deck. I mean, they play a Grist, but they don't have a creature to sacrifice it to. Uh, so I guess in this particular situation, no. But playing against something like the Mirror or whatnot, like you can just leave up Undying Malice if they have like removal for this Voidwalker, and just Undying Malice to make sure you get it back, because this card is going to be pretty good for us. So still hanging onto the Fury. We're going to be able to get in for some damage. We have Thoughtseize, hope to get something good. They just have 2 Court of Callings and an Eldritch Evolution, which really sucks. We take the Eldritch Evolution just because Court is not going to do too much. They choose not to go get Dryad Arbor, and we play on. So they get a Delighted Halfling, play another land. Again, we're just kind of hoping that we get something good here. We know that they drew the Delighted Halfling. We knew all the cards in their hand when we Thoughtseize. Take a Quarter Calling just so they just can't like chain things together. Again, still know that they have the cord. They get to chip in. We're taking a decent amount of damage. They draw a Yawgmoth. Uh, we just continue to draw lands. From here, I'm starting to get a little worried because our opponent you know, we have this Undying Malice. Like they're going to spend a lot of resources to kill Dauthi Voidwalker. You know, they need 2 creatures to get rid of a Voidwalker, and then after we Undying Malice it, they're going to have 3 more, and that that puts them at 5. Fury ends up killing like Yawgmoth and whatever's left, and then from there, like we can just win the game. So, kind of hoping that we draw a 5th land for Fury. Also hope that we like draw a red card. Drawing a red card would be better because we get to clear up their board. They're able to get an attack. They get to cord for 3, which goes and gets a grist plus grist, you know, and then they have all this stuff here to be able to snipe down a Dauthi Voidwalker. Right there is, you know, could be considered a mistake. If we were just going to go get a basic land, we could have just, you know, fetched on our turn, made it more likely to draw a land. So a little bit of a misstep there. However, we draw this Grief. We're going to end up playing it, and we can take a card from our opponent, which they have none. I debated for a while on what I was going to do, and the best play I came up with was to sacrifice the Dauthi Voidwalker and just see what my opponent did. So if they see that they have an Eldritch Evolution, 2 cores, and a Yawgmoth, none of these cards are particularly good. But I figured at this point, like one of my best outs was to Eldritch Evolution, sacrificing the Grief, and then getting a Fury to kind of like clear up this board, mainly like get rid of this Grist, and then from there, you know, our opponent is going to have to come up with like another creature while they're empty-handed, you know, and they get to draw a card too off this Pete land, but essentially they're going to have to find and like sack their board to get rid of a Fury, and we're still drawing live to another land to just play a Fury or another red card to Undying Malice and whatnot. And from there, if they're not able to do that, then we are able to Undying Malice the Fury that we get to bring it back and then clear up some more things. So this is contingent on them not sacking, and kind of a misstep they don't. So we're able to have Eldritch Evolution, get cool looking Fury, and get rid of their Grist, and put them in a tough spot to kind of like top deck. Well, no good attacks. They pass. We draw another Undying Malice, which I guess could be looked at as a good or a bad thing. In this particular case, if our opponent is able to like kill Fury, then you know these malices are going to be pretty good. I decided that I'm going to attack. They can't attack and kill me like on the backswing. You know, they end up sacrificing, putting a counter on this. They draw a card in the end step. Now another set with 3 cards in hand. Seeing 2 grist, another grist would kind of be painful, bordering on backbreaking. But thankfully, we're kind of good for now. We play Dauthi Voidwalker. This will be a way that we can kind of get in damage, leave the Fury on defense. But our opponent is just going to kind of like go for it here, where they just get rid of like this Voidwalker. You know, we could save it with an Undying Malice, but I would just much rather like save this Fury. Our opponent fetching, not getting like Dryad Arbor or anything like that, which could just hint that they might have like drew it. Our opponent trying to get rid of this Fury ends up working out very poorly for them because they're going to cause it to come back. We're going to kill this Yawgmoth, and you know from here they have to kind of cobble something else together. So here we are. We're hoping on red card. Of course, we don't draw it. We draw a Feign Death, which is really bad. So we kind of have some options here. We can either attack down the Grist, essentially because like the you know, if they block, then you know they have to go get Dryad Arbor and then sack it to Grist to get rid of Fury. And of course, we have an Undying Malice, which would be very unfortunate for them. Uh, we could just attack them, and it also forces the block. And I believe that we end up attacking them because it ends up being the same way. But I wouldn't be surprised if past me it just attacked the Grist, just to kind of hope to get it off the table. But you know, again, probably just makes more sense to attack them in that situation because they're definitely forced to block, where in the other case they're not forced to. They do this. They're about to be very sad because, oh, we, of course, feign death this. They kill it. It's going to come back. We're going to clear out this Grist. And then, you know, they, I think, end up courting for 3. So they end up having the 4th copy of Grist. Make a 1/1, still looking for a land, red card, whatever. And I believe we end up getting a Voidwalker, which is unfortunate. And we just, now this turn we decide to attack our opponent because, again, this tag is lethal. They're top decking, trying to look for a creature. They make a 1/1, and I believe now we end up drawing the land. Yep, so we end up drawing the land. We're able to fetch 3, go get a basic. Uh, we even like Bowmaster kind of for style. Ping the token out of the way, go on and attack our opponent. 4 lethal, but they have an endurance. Oh, I kind of forgot about that. Man, this game was like so crazy. And I mean, like they're not able to like kill it, but like they're pretty much forced to do this. Fury, we end up knocking this Grist down to 1, which is kind of like their way of winning the game was that. So, a rough game 1, we looked like we were in a pretty good chance to like take it. Our opponent top decked very well, had some dead cards in the beginning that weren't very good for our Voidwalker, but probably that one mistake of letting the grief live, so that we could Eldritch Evolution it into a Fury, and that Fury stayed on the battlefield the whole time, thanks to some Undying Malices and things like that. So that's game 1. We will pause here and go ahead and go over to game 2. Here we are for game 2 of Scam versus Yawgmoth. So here's the hand that we ended up keeping. So at the current moment, we are not going to be able to grief feign death our opponent with this hand. But I kept this hand, and like we had talked about, this deck can play like a mid-range deck, and I'm keeping this hand based on the fact that if we draw a black card, which our deck plays a ton of black cards, that we just get to grief feign death them. Thoughtseize them twice. Going to be pretty good. Spell bomb, as backup. If they ever start to like combo, we can just kind of interact with their combo that way. And of course, Fable the Mirror Breaker is an awesome card when you get to like grief your opponent on their draw step, every turn. So decided to keep this hand based on that. Our opponent leads on Yawgmoth. We go to our turn. We end up drawing a Fury. And this is where I'm like, okay, we ended up drawing the Fury. We're just going to get rid of this. And a neat trick that you can do with these Evoke creatures in this deck, where you are able to kill a Yawgmoth with a Fury and a Feign Death. You just have to make sure that you stack the Evoke trigger first and then the damage second, so that you deal the damage. The Undying trigger will go on top of the Evoke trigger. The creature will come back, and then you cast Feign Death, or as long as you cast Feign Death before the Evoke trigger, because if you let it die first and then come back, you're going to deal 4 damage, and then the creature's going to come back, and then your original is going to fizzle. So when you have Evoke trigger first, deal damage second, you're able to actually kill an Undying creature with it, or multiple Undying creatures with it. So just a thing to note. So we do that. Essentially, I'm like, they're not going to be able to deal with this 4/4. Like, they're going to have to play a creature every turn. It's going to put them into the abyss. I thought, what could be worse? And we still have, the spell bomb that we can play and, mess with our graveyard, draw a card later if we need to. And now we have this Undying Malice, so if we ever find another black card, then Grief is just going to kind of like put our opponent in the dirt. So we get in. Our opponent ends up having to go for the throat, so I decided to use the Undying Malice on this, just simply for the fact of like wanting to keep this around. Like now they're going to need more threats. Unfortunately, we keep drawing lands. Our opponent has Bowmaster, which means that if they have a Grist, they're going to be able to keep a creature around to essentially kill this Grief, which is going to be very annoying for us, which of course they do. They're able to sack this Bowmaster, get rid of this Grief, or get rid of the Fury, and now we're in trouble because we really don't have anything. So uh, I'm going to blow this just so we can actually get some card advantage going. Unfortunately, draw a tap land, so we end up just dashing the Ragavan, getting rid of the Grist, and then I believe playing the Blackleaf Cliffs, and going on with our life. Still, we can hard cast a Grief and a Ragavan. Our opponent misses their land drop. That's good for us. We continue to draw lands. So when our Grief, kind of take a peek, see what's going on. And we kind of see a nightmare scenario where they missed on lands, but they have Eldritch Evolution, they have an Endurance, they have a Yawgmoth. We end up taking the Endurance just because the fact that they'll have 2/3/4s against our 3/2 is no bueno. So we ended up just taking the 2 life, playing, or no, we ended up playing it tapped because we're just going to end up dashing like the Ragavan if we need to. Also holding it because then we could like pitch it to a Fury as well if we draw another Fury. Opponent top 6 to land, gets to play Yawgmoth. Not very good with just Endurance for the fact that Endurance is definitely a better attacker and blocker than it is just sack fodder. So kind of good for us. We continue to hardcore flat on land, so I just like run out the Ragavan as like a possibility if I need to like double block this Endurance to kind of get it out of here, which our opponent does attack, and I do oblige like on the double block. Like probably wrong because we don't really have anything going on, but I also just kind of want to get this off the board because now if we draw like a Fury or something like that, if we could stop drawing lands, we can end up doing something, to this board. We get rid of the Yawgmoth and the Zulaport Cutthroat virtually does nothing. Thought sees that we have a swamp. They still have just evolution in hand. They could get rid of this cutthroat and go get like something, but they don't really need to. They're firmly in the driver's seat here with us having nothing going on. Now, thankfully, this Voidwalker, if they end up assembling, some undying creatures, this Voidwalker is going to stop it. So, we're still just kind of looking for something. They don't end up getting a trigger from Cutthroat because it gets exiled. End up playing another Grist, which means they're going to be able to plus and then put a counter on that and just firmly keep their grasp of keeping our board clear. Finally draw Fury. Debated here for a minute and just decided to go with the Grist instead because we're going to be able to block the Yawgmoth. They end up drawing another Go for the Throat, not sacking this and then getting in for like the last point, so we're able to kind of like take another minute from them, and then they finally attack for lethal, but they definitely didn't need to take that extra turn. They could have just sacrificed Stringo Geist, targeted nothing, had 5 power in play, attack for lethal. So that is game 2. Unfortunately, kind of did the thing, and it didn't end up being good enough. Our opponent had enough our early game interaction for it, and we weren't able to ride that to victory, unfortunately. So uh, that said, let's go ahead and get ready for game 3 of this match and see how it ends. And here we are for the final game 3. Of course, we are on the play. End up mulliganing to 6. Mulliganing to 6. I don't know if we go any lower. Yeah, we end up keeping this hand. We have 2 lands, so we're able to play this Voidwalker on turn 2, which is going to be very good in the matchup. Up until if they can get a bunch of tokens in Yawgmoth, it's bad. But aside from that, it's going to be able to allow us to play this Voidwalker, and then eventually, if we find a red card, which if anyone was keeping score, game 1 it took forever. I don't even think we found a red card technically to pitch to Fury. I think we ended up like casting it. But that said, this Voidwalker is going to help us out, and if we ever find a red card, then like Fury plus Undying Malice is just going to absolutely clear their board, and Voidwalker is going to stop any of their things from coming back. We don't even have to necessarily Undying Malice, whatever, to keep the Fury around. Obviously, that'd be good, but if it doesn't end up working out, it's okay because we're going to get to clear up their board with kind of what we have. So not playing anything on turn 1, not scamming them, just kind of wanting to play as like a mid-range deck that's going to have some pretty resilient threats, all things considered. We continue the trend of just drawing a ton of lands, so then we end up playing this Voidwalker on turn 2, passing, and this is going to be kind of like our beatdown plan for the rest of the game because if they don't have Go for the Throat, we're going to be able to protect it from here on out. Still drawing lands, which is pretty crazy. I believe this deck plays like 20 lands, so it is what it is. Our opponent plays like Bowmaster, just pings us, makes a token. Oh, again, just being able to like fetch, they get to play their like Grist, which is like the millionth one that they've played this game, and we get to kind of blow them out with, just getting to bring back this Voidwalker and putting counters on like their lands and stuff, like whatever. But this Voidwalker is going to be able to attack down a Grist and play a Grist. We end up drawing the Fable the Mirror Breaker, which is like a nice follow up, and we get to keep up Undying Malice as well. So pretty good for us. Our opponent drawing another Grist, which is like insane. Which of course they're gonna get got by this Undying Malice, which is, it's awesome. I love the fact that we are able to punish them, even though they, drew running Grist, and we're able to kind of like keep it going. We end up getting rid of the push just because I wanted to hit another land for Fury. So we end up just like having the Fury. We're gonna sweep their board, and then we're gonna get in for 6 points of damage, and they're pretty low on clock. They have like 3 cards in hand. Even if they end up having like another 1 mana thing plus Grist to get rid of like Dothy Voidwalker, or even get rid of like Fury or whatever, like one of these two things are gonna go and finish it off while also getting to deal our opponent a ton of damage. On top of that, too, Fable flipping, like they must not have had anything to really deal with any of these, because even like whatever one they deal with, like Fable's going to be able to copy the other, and getting to say like copy a Voidwalker to then play like a Grist, and you know continue to do that, and it's just going to be insane. So we I'm not gonna say thoroughly trash Yawgmoth. This is a pretty bad matchup for Yawgmoth. Our opponent played pretty well, and ran pretty hot in game two to end up beating us when we did get to do our thing on the first turn of game two. That said, I didn't play the best, and it kind of didn't matter. Like it just kind of shows off the power of like this Rakdos Evoke deck that we only did it the thing in one game, and I believe we mulliganed in every game down to at least 6 cards, and the deck still was able to function very well. And even the game where we drew a ton of lands, like we were like a draw or two, like turn one or two of those lands into like an actual spell, and chances are, we're back in that game. Like we have the chance to kind of win it and finish it in game two instead of having to play game three. So overall, Rakdos of Oak definitely has earned its spot as like one of the top tier decks and the deck to beat in the format. Uh, Kind of for the absurdity of what it did. I mean, like our Feign Deaths and Undying Malices save creatures more often than it kind of like cheapened the evoke cost, by getting to keep a Fury or a Grief around. Like it kept around Voidwalkers and ended up keeping around Furies as well, that were hard cast and everything. So definitely more than meets the eye. It definitely can be pretty scummy and scammy when you get griefed on turn one. But aside from that, it just plays like a really powerful Rakdos mid-range deck, and definitely with Fable the Mirror Breaker, I thoroughly enjoyed playing that card. Currently trying to finish up a league with it, but all in all, pretty happy with how the deck performed. It's very powerful, definitely worth trying it out before any potential bannings and things like that. While it's still around the format, it probably won't see anything banned, but you never know. It's Wizards has made some pretty weird decisions in the past, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, that's gonna do it for me in this video. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like on the video. If you want to see more gameplay content like this in Modern, uh, planning on doing at least, like I said, all the decks that made the top 8. We have Amulet Titan still, we have Tron, and we have Rhinos. Trying to get some games for that so we can kind of like go over and break them down. So that's gonna do it for me. I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope to see you all in the next video.